In the world of cybersecurity, there's infinite opportunities. Meet some of the industry's best on this episode of Cyber Careers Revealed.
My name is Jack Clabby. I work at a law firm in Florida called Carlton Fields. My job title is shareholder. That means that I'm a part owner of the law firm, and me and the other shareholders kind of practice together as a team, helping out our clients. The kind of law that I do is cybersecurity law. So I help companies, usually pretty big companies, but also some startup companies, technology companies, and software companies. I help them get ready for cybersecurity incidents. We might know them as breaches. So I help them get ready for it, and then when the breaches happen, they give me a call and I walk them through what they should do to comply with the law during a breach event. So a big chunk of what I do, in addition to helping clients with crises events, helping clients get ready for breaches, is I represent companies that have been sued. And a lot of times they're sued because a customer of theirs is unhappy with the way that the company might be handling their data, right? So let's say I represent a bank. A person who did business with that bank might be upset that they learned that there was a hack of the bank and their credit card number was exposed. I'll help represent the company in that lawsuit. And so a lot of what I do is I write long papers, kind of like term papers for school, that explain why the company that I am representing shouldn't be held liable. That means they shouldn't be responsible for damages that came from this exposure. And a lot of times I'm arguing that it's the bad guys, the criminal hackers, who are really responsible, not my client, and that my client tried to do everything they could to comply with good practices of cybersecurity. A lot of times there are students who are good writers or students who are good at arguing in the classroom, and they might think maybe a career in the law is for me. And I think that largely is true, right? I think there are people who just like to fight. But the thing that I like to do, that I think is really what's successful for a lawyer, is do you like to fight for other people? Right? It's one thing to be someone who just likes to argue. I don't love to argue. What I like to do is help someone who has been put in an unfair position. I get really upset when I'm driving on the road and I see one driver cut off another driver. Almost more upset than if I were cut off. That's the feature that makes you happy as a lawyer, because I'm not fighting for myself, right? It's not just in my personal life. I don't act like this, right? I act on behalf of my clients. And so if you're somebody who, maybe in the classroom, you're a student who feels that when maybe a teacher says something about a student or falsely accuses a student of something, you get upset for that student. That's the impulse that would make you maybe a happy and successful lawyer, because they're long hours and it's stressful. But if you can be excited by having walked your client through a crisis, that's really the future you want to look at. You want to look for and what makes it happy. So if a young person is interested in a career in law, and they're interested in a career that's going to last, and they can do some of the computer stuff. They don't need to be a programmer, but they have to be interested in computer systems. This is a really good way to have a career. If you're thinking about a career in cybersecurity and you like reading and research and writing, and you like solving problems for others, and you like advocating for others, cybersecurity and law is a good mix and lets you do both those things. I got into it originally, right, before I learned about cybersecurity law, because I like to meet new people, I like to talk on my feet, I like to be persuasive, and I like to help others with those skills. And I had wanted to be a prosecutor. I wanted to be someone who was putting bad guys away. What I learned was, even in the role of prosecutor, most of my day was spent in front of a computer, sitting in a chair, not talking to people, not persuading people, but writing. Right? And so for young folks who are attracted to this role, don't think that you need to be the most outgoing person in your classroom. Don't think you need to be a great public speaker. You really don't. The people who are excellent at the kind of law that I practice, cybersecurity law, are people who love research and writing and can spend long hours researching and writing at a computer. So for the most part, a lawyer in private practice who practices cybersecurity is going to be well off. Right? It is a good opportunity to make a lot of money. There's a lot of variety, though, for the kind of practices that we do. If you're working for a law firm, it does depend. There are a number of law firms there that just do incident response now. and they're paid by insurance companies to help folks do incident response. And so the starting salaries there are a little lower than they would be at a larger firm, but it might be something between 80 and 110,000 or 80 and 120,000. In those roles, you do a lot of breach response over and over and over again, and you really learn it, but it can be pretty draining and you can sometimes burn out. The larger the law firm, the salaries can get higher, and the more you spend there, the more time you spend. And these are just Googleable numbers, so I'm not kind of revealing anything, but there are cybersecurity partners who have huge practices who make $3 million or more a year, right? I don't work in that sort of an environment, right? Those are a lot of New York, Los Angeles-based attorneys who can make a ton of money doing this. And then between there, in other markets, it can be between 250,000 to 500,000, right? So the salaries can be pretty significant. Some of the in-house lawyers that I work with, who are my clients, their salaries are also very large, and they don't have the sort of 24-hour-a-day on-call that a private practice lawyer does. And so if you are a 10-year lawyer, right? If you've been a lawyer for 10 years and you can become a lead privacy attorney at a big company, you can make between $350,000 and $400,000. Huge salaries for having good expertise, relatively junior, right? That could be a 35-year-old person making that amount of money working for a public company as a privacy person. The numbers are high, but the average lawyer who works in cybersecurity doesn't make those numbers, right? They're gonna make somewhere between 50 and 80,000 working for a smaller firm, working for a state or municipal agency. And depending on how much you spent for law school, it could take you a while to pay off the debt. So the advice I typically give people is make sure that you want to do this before you go on this path, because it is hard to get to a place where you're making the high dollars. And it's very stressful when you get there. That said, right, you'll have a lot of fun. But if you are interested in doing this because you want to be a lawyer and you want to have some period of government service, you can have a nice living and relative job stability. To be a cybersecurity lawyer, right, you need to have completed an undergraduate degree in college. Typically that's a 4-year degree, and you get your bachelor's degree. It can be in any subject, right? It doesn't need to be in a hard science, it doesn't need to be in English, it can be in whatever you might be interested in. Then you go on to law school, and law school is a 3-year program. So undergraduate 4 years, law school's 3 years. Some people take time off between undergrad and law school. I think that's a great idea to take time off, get a job. Law school is also expensive. You can save up for it, right? Sometimes it's good to get a job at a law firm, right, as a paralegal or as a clerk, so you can learn a little bit more about what it's like. Sometimes it's interesting, if you're interested in becoming a prosecutor, to be involved in law enforcement for some period of time, maybe as a civilian, not necessarily as a law enforcement officer, to learn a little bit about what that community does. In terms of certifications, there are some very common ones now for cybersecurity lawyers. The International Association of Privacy Professionals, the IAPP, gives out certifications. The most common one for a cybersecurity professional is a CIPP or a CISP. Those are specific, you study for them and then you take a test. And essentially the test is on the framework of laws that govern privacy or security, the security frameworks that help keep companies safe and keep them attesting to their security. So the IAPP is the main certification that lawyers do. A number of the lawyers that I practice with at Carlton Fields, the law firm that I work for, have those certifications. I don't. I've studied for them, but I've never sat down and taken them. I think because I was a federal prosecutor who worked in cybersecurity, I've never sort of needed that credential. But right now I do have the book sitting next to my bedside table, and I had been putting off reading it for a good year. So at some point I will take that test, but I am not currently certified. So anything that touches cybersecurity right now is a high need. And I think that if we think of the practice that I have now as having a couple parts, right? We have counseling on the front end to help companies comply with the law and get set up for security events. Then we think about helping companies who have had security incidents respond to those incidents, and then defending those companies in lawsuits. It's really 3 things. The first thing, helping companies comply, lawyers have a role with that, but there are other professionals who get involved as well, consultants, security experts directly. And a lot of times I'll be involved in hiring those experts for my clients to help them, right? And so there's a lot of ways you can get involved on the front end in incident response without being an attorney. right? But it's never going away, right? Early incident preparation is always going to be with us. Incident response in real time, I think it's growing still, but I think it could potentially become the sort of thing where, if non-lawyer professionals get really good at this, they could take the places of some lawyers in incident response. And then third, defending companies in court or prosecuting cases for companies in court, that's only thing that lawyers can do. And so if someone is attracted to cybersecurity and is thinking about a career in the law, I think long-term, being able to be a courtroom lawyer or a brief writer or a researcher who wants to work on active cases in court, that's going to be a place where they're always going to have something to do. I think the other two areas that are really fascinating and kind of cool to work in, I think we're going to see non-lawyer professionals get more and more involved there, and I've seen that too. So if you're a young person who is thinking about becoming a breach coach, right? That's a lot of what I do. It's a breach coach. I will help a company get through an incident, organize all the players, and tell them what to do next, or at least give them ideas that they can pick from about what to do next. I think that is increasingly being done by folks who are not lawyers. And so that might change or shift as a part of what I do over time, and I'll find myself doing more counseling on the front end and doing more litigation and working with companies that are in court. So the advice I give to young folks who are thinking about law school is, remember you'll be a lawyer first and a cybersecurity lawyer second. So if you like cybersecurity but you're not sure about law school, it's probably not the thing to do. Go do something cybersecurity related for a couple of years. You can always go back to law school. I'm the hiring partner at my law firm. We have 330 lawyers all around the country, right? We're based in Florida. We have a lot of office in Florida, but we're also in California and New York. And when I hire young lawyers, I really like to look for work experience between undergrad and between their law school. And the reason I look for it is, do you know what you're getting yourself into? Or did you go down this path to become a lawyer because someone told you you were good at arguing when you were in 8th grade, right? The path to here, it's long and it's expensive to become a lawyer. But it is the only job, it's the only job where you can appear in court on behalf of someone else. Right, so if you want to do that first, and then you have an interest in cybersecurity, it can be a great combination of those two things. But if you're cybersecurity first, I would go get that cybersecurity job and test it out. Don't rush into it. Right, do something else first. You can always go back to law school. Right, it'll defray the cost, and it will make sure that you're not going to law school because your aunt said you should. You're going to law school because, right, there's really nothing. You want to do the thing that lawyers do. Right, which is go to court and argue things. And if you have a cybersecurity interest, you'll have a really nice and really fun career. But if you're cybersecurity first, test it out first. And there's a lot of jobs that are willing to hire people and want to hire people and need to hire people if you come out of college interested in cybersecurity.